Hi everyone, my name is Christine and I am going to share with you my labor and birth story. I don't have a lot of footage of it because I think just because of the way that it started and the way that it progressed, I didn't really want any footage taken up until the very end when she was born. Um, but in any case, I just want to talk about it and explain and just kind of go through everything that happened from when I first went into labor, or I didn't even know I was going into labor, and then all the way through to my birth. And then I might add some footage at the end of the actual birth because I do have a video of that and some photos. So on August 8th at 2:55 a.m., my little Hazel here was born. We had a approximately, I want to say, 14-hour labor from the time that like labor started, active labor started, and then progressed till the end. Um, so I'll just backtrack a little bit, obviously. So basically on August 6th, yes, 2 days before, so that would have been a Sunday, I was just kind of hanging around here in my apartment. Um, my husband and his mom, so my mother in law, were here. We were just going about our day to day. At that point on Sundays, that's when I would start my new week. So I was 39 weeks pregnant by that time. And while we were hanging out here, I noticed during the evening, I think that's when it started, where I was having, or even just throughout the afternoon, I was noticing that I was getting this back pain. It was like right in the middle of my lower back. And I was having, like, throughout my pregnancy, um, I've had aches and pains, especially like in my hip area, not really in my back, but in my hip area. So I just thought, okay, maybe I just need to do some more, exercises. So as you can see, I'm bouncing my ball. So went on my ball and I just started doing some like hip tilts and everything, and it would kind of alleviate it, but it wasn't really doing much. And then I want to say by around like 8 or 9 p.m. that day, um, so I was sitting on the couch watching some YouTube while my husband and my mother-in-law were chatting, and I had my laptop on a pillow in my lap, and I had to like put the laptop and the pillow down. But because of this like back spasm that happened, I didn't do it very smoothly and I dropped my laptop. And they both looked at me and they were like, "Did you just drop your laptop?" And I was like, "Yes." But I didn't really explain to them why. I just kind of played it off like, "Oh, yeah, silly me," or whatever. Um, so after after that, like, I didn't think anything about labor or nothing until that same night. We went to bed, and as I'm going to bed, I'm like having to really focus, uh, or at least like brace myself for the pain. It's like coming on all of a sudden, and then as I'm walking, it's like kind of going away. I brush my teeth, I lay down in bed, and that actually makes the pain even worse. Like this spasm just like comes on, and if I don't get up out of the bed, then like it just doesn't go away. And at this point, I didn't equate this to being back labor. I just thought that I was having these like random spasms in my lower back, and it was like this tightening in my lower back. So I literally couldn't really go to sleep though, and I decided to go into our guest bedroom and lay down there, or at least try to, because I just kept getting up. I also noticed that I was going to the bathroom a lot. So I was like evacuating my bowels every time with one of these spasms, as I thought. And I thought, okay, maybe labor is actually going to start like sometime within the next couple of days, and my body's just like setting itself up for that. And then when I went into the other room, I was trying to lay down, but it's like every time I would try to lay down, it would cause one of these spasms to come on, and I'd have to get up out of the bed, and I would go to the bathroom, and yeah, it was just so annoying. I did not get any sleep that night, So then I started thinking, because it was kind of happening more, not regularly, but it was happening to the point that I was like, is this back labor? Like, this is my first pregnancy, this is my first birth or labor, so like I don't know what to expect. Is this back labor? So I started looking it up, and nothing was really confirming that this was what it was. And I will say also that that weekend I was having, it seemed to be a bloody show, but I wasn't sure, because I've heard of streaked, losing your mucus plug, and that sometimes will have a little bit of blood streaks in it as well. And I had texted my midwife, when I noticed that, and she said, "Well, just let me know if contractions start like coming more regularly." So again, like I didn't think anything of it, and until um, like not, I didn't have these back spasms like while I was having that show up, but when I was having the back spasms during the night, that Sunday night, I was noticing more and more bloody shows. So I was like, okay, maybe this is like signs of labor potentially starting sometime soon. So I went through the night. Morning finally came, and I don't even know if I got any sleep. It felt like I didn't get any, because anytime that I would try to, like, I would finally get some rest, I would get another one of those spasms coming on. And I want to say they were happening every like 20 to 30 minutes. So it was totally sporadic, not consistent. And again, I didn't equate it to it being actual contractions, because I felt nothing in like my uterus area, basically. So I wake up the next morning, or I'm like pretty much awake anyways, but my husband wakes up the next morning. And he notices that I'm not in our bedroom. So he comes into the other room. He's like, "Hey, what's going on? Are you okay?" And I said, "I just had a terrible sleep. I've been having these like back spasms. I don't know if it's like contractions. I mean, could be back labor, but I didn't, at this point, I had knew that she was in a good position. She was left occiput anterior, which is supposedly like the perfect position to avoid back labor. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense if this is even back labor. So my husband suggested, he was like, "Hey, why don't you just text the midwife and get some clarity?" So that's what I did. This is now Monday, August 7th. So I texted my midwife, and I told her basically what I was experiencing, and she's like, "Well, that sound like contractions." So it was so funny though, because my midwife was pretty busy for August. So she said to me, she's like, "Hey, by the way, like I'm trying to get a 42 weeker into labor. So if you're gonna go into labor, just know that I might not be able to make it to your labor if I get this 42 weeker induced, basically, or naturally induced." So, but anyways, what my midwife had suggested by that point was I take a bath, and then to do the mile circuit, and just see if things like would pick up, or at least, or allow me to relax, and then I can maybe get some rest. And she just suggested get as much sleep as you can, because if you do go into labor, like you want to have as much energy as possible, right? So um, I did the bath. I ran the bath. I did some Epsom salts. That helped it a little bit. As soon as I came back out of the bath, though, like the contractions or spasms, as I was still thinking about them, were still happening. So I did the mile circuit, because the mile circuit is these three different exercise, not really exercises, but like positions to help um, get labor going, and to help the baby get into a good position. Um, but some of them are they're pretty relaxing anyways, except for the last one. So I was able to get some decent sleep, and I was able to actually sleep through some of the contractions that I was having, while I was doing it, even though they were like so sporadic and stuff. So I was able to go through the mile circuit. By this point, my midwife had texted me back, and she was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I just told her what was going on, and she was like, "Okay, well, I'm not actually going to go to my 42 weaker. I'm going to just stay at home and um, just kind of wait it out a little bit. So if you want to come into the office, I can check you, and we can see kind of what's going on, and kind of just see what's happening." So that's what we decided to do. We decided to go into my midwife's office at her home. So we drove over, and while we drove over there, I had maybe like two or three of these like back spasm contractions. Um, and so again, like still very sporadic. I didn't think I was going into labor at all, and I didn't want to believe that I was having back labor because I was like, this doesn't make any sense. My baby's in an optimal position. Why would I be having back labor? So we get to my midwife's office. She hooks me up to a contraction, uh, this like belt that measures contractions and also measures the baby's heart rate. I don't know what it's called exactly. So she did that, and sure enough, was able to pick up that I was having contractions and that the baby's heart rate was totally fine. Like she was tolerating the contractions well. So she's like, this could mean that labor's starting soon. It could mean that it's just your body like preparing itself. I don't really know, but if you want, I can also check you and do like a cervical check and see how if like anything's happening basically. So I agreed to the cervical check, and she gave me basically like three options. She was like, okay, if you're in between like a one and a two, then you could do this cocktail that I like to do if you need to get if you really need to get some rest, which is basically like Tylenol and Benadryl, and it'll help to kind of not take away the contractions that you're having, but at least get you like relaxed enough to be able to get some sleep in the case that labor does pick up. Um, Option number two is, hey, we can get labor kickstarted, and that's if you're like at about a 5 or 6 centimeters, and then we can just get the show on the road. Or option three would just be to like wait it out and let things kind of take its course on how it wants to. So I was erring more on the side of, regardless of what was happening, to just kind of let things happen. I wasn't too big on the Tylenol, Benadryl, and I wasn't too crazy about just kind of getting labor started either. I just wanted to see if my body would just kind of do it naturally. Um, so, anyways, when she checked me, I actually was at a three, almost 4 centimeters dilated, and she's like, I was 100% effaced, and I was at like a station. I think it's like negative when they actually are like engaged in the pelvis. She's like, I could feel the baby's head, the amniotic sac is still intact. Doesn't feel like you're losing any amniotic fluid. So she's like, you're literally in that in between where like you could do any of these options. So again, we just erred on the side of like, let's just kind of take things as naturally as possible and let's just see how things go. So this is around, we went to the appointment at the midwife at around like 12:30. So we left by 1 o'clock. By the time we were on the road and back home, it's about a 30-minute drive. I was having like the contractions now started coming more regularly, to the point that even my husband was noticing. He was like, okay, now they're starting to like pick up and have more of a rhythm to them. I hadn't tried to time them at all. Like I said, I didn't even know that these were even contractions. I thought they were just like weird back spasms, and I wasn't expecting to have back labor. Oh yeah, my midwife also checked the baby, and she was in the LOA position, but apparently some women just have back labor, and it doesn't matter how the baby's positioned. Maybe she had turned, maybe her head was actually turned a certain way that was like causing that, but again, I don't know. But anyways, um, by the time we get back home, again, we're having regular. Again, I'm not timing them, so I don't know how regular they are, but they're regular back labor contractions. Um, because I was 39 weeks pregnant only, I thought I had a week left to prepare. So as I'm contracting, um, I'm actually starting to prepare the bed for our home birth, and just kind of getting all of last minute things ready, like all the things in my basket that I was supposed to have for that, in the case that this was going to progress. I didn't know how long labor was going to be, so I wanted to make sure I had food in my stomach. And that morning, I actually had sent my husband to go and get a bunch of snacks and stuff like that, because he was like, well, in the case that you are going to go into labor, let me go and get some of those things that you wanted on your list of things like for labor. So we were all prepared. basically. So by around, I think it was like 4 or 5 p.m., my husband had actually left to go work um, for a couple hours and to see some of his clients. And I was just at home, like chilling on our bed, trying to get some rest and just kind of really take it easy and relax. The contractions were coming more regularly, and I noticed they were coming more frequently. So I was like, you know what, maybe let me start timing them because I have no idea like how far apart these are. So I started um, timing them, and they were about, I want to say like 5 to 7 minutes apart when I first started um, timing them. I told my midwife, I was like, hey, they're coming around like 5 to 7 minutes apart. There's the intensity hasn't really like changed that much. It's still the same, but yeah, this is just kind of an update. So she actually suggested, well, I would maybe like consider calling the doula, um, and then maybe she can also help you kind of ease some of the pain that you're experiencing with the back labor and just kind of help you relax. So so that's what I did. I messaged the doula, and she had actually messaged me already and said, hey, like just keep me posted. I heard that you're having regular contractions and that you're progressing, so let me know when you want me to come. So I did message her, and by this point the contractions are definitely coming more like 3 to 5 minutes apart. And when the doula ended up calling me, and as I'm on the phone with her, I'm having a contraction. And when it was done, she was like, okay, like I could come, but you don't sound like you're in labor. Like you sound too chill to be in labor. And I was like, well, they're coming like this consistently, and like now the pain is getting like kind of intolerable. Like it's getting to the point that it's making me really uncomfortable. Like I think I'm gonna just need some support, right? So she's like, no problem. Like I'll take my time coming over. If you want to just run a bath, while while I'm on my way there, then maybe that'll help with the back pain. So that's what I did. I ran a bath. Um, I believe she came at like, I want to say like 8 o'clock or something like that. So my husband had already arrived, and when he arrived, I was actually laboring. So I was in the bathtub. I then started laboring uh, on the toilet, so sitting like the wrong way on the toilet, basically, so that I could rest my head on the top of the toilet. And the doula came, and she basically was just watching me, just kind of seeing how I was tolerating everything. And it's funny because she asked my husband, she's like, so like how are things been progressing, like what do you think? And he was like, honestly, I've been out, I have no idea. She's like, okay, I'm just observing her, and honestly, I can't really tell if she just has a really high pain tolerance or what's going on. So um eventually we end up, I think I go either back into the tub for a little bit, and or if I didn't go back into the tub, we went into the bedroom. And because now it's getting, around like close to 10 p.m., and I was just laboring on the toilet for a long time. And I had some meditation music that I really, really like. And that was helping me just like stay focused and stay calm. So my doula ended up telling me, she's like, hey, why don't you try and get some rest? Like actually lie down and just conserve your energy. And she's like, you can maybe try some exercises on the floor before you get into the bed. So I tried to lean on the ball, but that was super uncomfortable. I tried to just be on all fours. That was super uncomfortable. And I will say that with back labor, a lot of the times people apparently can tolerate like some counter pressure, especially in that area. I could not have anybody touch me in that area. It was so sensitive. It was so painful. Like it was painful. I'm not going to say so painful because the so painful came later. Um, so anyways, we tried doing the different positions. That didn't really work. So she's like, okay, just try lying in bed and relaxing. And my doula was like, oh, I'm gonna go into the living room, leave you two to just kind of relax together and just try to get some rest. So I got my husband to, well, this is what I was trying to do. I was trying to get my husband to like, I was gonna lie on my side and I wanted him to kind of like lean on me to provide some support because I like to have like back support while I'm resting, especially on my side. So we have this big husband pillow, and he was gonna lean on that and so rest on that and then lean on me, like while so that the husband pillow was actually leaning on me. So when he first sat down and did that, I like the pressure immediately. I was like, no, 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 stop, 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 stop. Like we have to readjust. So I was like, why don't you put another pillow and then the husband pillow and then lean back, and that'll be a bit better for support. So as he gets the other pillow, leans back into the husband pillow, I the pressure on my lower back, I was like, no, 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 stop, 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 stop. And in that moment, I just feel this pop inside my belly, and it literally felt like this massive balloon, and this gush of like warm water just like came out of me. It was the weirdest sensation ever. So I was like, oh my God, I think my water broke. So the doula comes into the room. The bed is wet. My shorts are soaked. And she's like, oh yeah, 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 that looks like your water. She's like, hey, why don't you go into the, she's like, go and get, like, go to the bathroom and just kind of like get cleaned up a little bit. Um, and I'm going to call the midwife. I'm going to call Caitlin. So I go into the bathroom. I'm like drenched in this like amniotic fluid. The doula takes pictures. She sees that everything's okay, everything's clear. There's no signs of like meconium or anything like that. Um, so I get on the toilet. As I'm walking to the toilet, she's like, "Don't be surprised if it just keeps gushing out." And sure enough, it's just like more and more. So I sit on the toilet. I'm like, I'm drenched. So I had to take my pants off. Eventually, I'm on the toilet. Then I'm like, okay, I need to like, I feel really gross. Like I want to rinse this off or whatever. So I get into the shower for a little bit. Um, and by this point, the contractions are getting more intense, to the point that now I'm like, holy crap, this is intense. This is pretty painful, especially because as I was contracting in my back, again, they were all in my back in this like, it would just like go into this center point in my lower back and just feel like this tightening, spasming kind of feeling. And after my water broke, it was just more intense, and then it started basically radiating into my legs and to my thighs. So even in between the contractions, it was I was still experiencing pain. So unfortunately, with my labor, because usually they say like between contractions you'll be able to rest, I was not able to rest in between contractions in the sense of like just having like that relief. I was still experiencing discomfort and pain basically. So eventually, so I finished in the shower. I ended up going back into the bathtub and just try to like relax as much as possible, even though the contractions, like I said, are getting way, way, way more intense. Um, the only position that I can really take is on my knees and just kind of leaning. And I'm trying, like, I can't even really sit like on my bottom. I have to stay on my knees the whole time. And as I'm in the bathtub, like, they're just getting more intense. And to the point that I'm like putting my face in the water and like blowing bubbles and just getting to that point of like I was having thoughts of like, I don't know if I can do this. This is so painful. My midwife eventually gets there, and it's probably like close to midnight. And she checks the baby. She uses a Doppler, and she's like, "Baby sounds amazing. Like she's tolerating the contractions really well." And she kept asking me, "Do you want me to do a cervical check?" And honestly, by this point, I was in like labor land. I could not even think about doing a cervical check because it was just like the contractions were just coming so regularly, and I couldn't think about anything except for like just getting through what I was experiencing physically. So again, like I'm in the bathtub, and then eventually I get out of the bathtub. I was suggested to get out of the bathtub because they were setting up the birth pool, and the birth pool takes about an hour to set up, so that's why I think I was in the bathtub. So eventually, like right before the birth pool was fully set up, um, I get out and I get back onto the toilet and just start laboring that way. And by this point, I just remember, so uh, like right before I got out, I remember it being so intense and being like, I know I can do this. I've committed to this, and like so many women have done this before me. So I'm like trying to like channel all the women that have gone before me and say like I can do this too. And it was so funny because I remember distinctly this thought. Um, Shout out Megan if she watches this, but I remember specifically thinking about Megan, and she had just given birth at home, like I guess 9 months prior to in January, and I had just watched her labor or her birth video again, and I just remember her like calm, like cool and collectedness, and I was like trying to channel that. I was like, just be like Megan, but my contraction was so intense, and the pain that I was experiencing in my back, I was just like, no, 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 like I can't, like it's like a screw being like Megan, like this is not like her labor at all. But anyways, I just thought that was hilarious, and I remember specifically thinking about that. But anyway, so we get out of the bathtub, and I get back onto the toilet, and my doula keeps saying like, "Hey, like, do you want us to check you?" And again, like, I was so just like focused because the pain, and then as I was sitting on the toilet as well with the contractions, the contraction would like radiate into my legs, and I would have to like I would be sitting, and then I'd have to get up, and I had my husband sitting right in front of me on a stool, and I would get up like sort of hunched over, like not fully standing, and just kind of like dig my hands into his legs just to kind of like channel that pain into something else that wasn't me. It was, I felt so bad because I was putting so much pressure and pain, and I don't even know if it hurt him, but like it was just a lot. It was a lot. Um, so again, throughout this whole thing, my midwife's like checking the baby. She's doing totally fine. I didn't end up getting checked at all throughout my whole labor. Eventually, when I'm on the toilet, they tell me, "Hey, Christine, the birth pool is set up. Do you want to get in?" And I just didn't say anything. Like I said, I was like in the zone, and I couldn't think about anything else except for like what I was experiencing in my back and in my legs and my thighs. And again, like maybe 10 minutes later, they're like, "Hey, Christine, the birth pool is ready. Do you want to get in?" And finally, I was like, "I do, but I can't move," because when I was trying to like get up, the way that the contraction was just like radiating into my legs, I felt like I was like, I can't move. Like I'm gonna fall over, essentially, is how I felt. Um, so they were like, no, 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 it's okay, don't worry. Like we're gonna help you get into the birth pool. So they all kind of like shuffle me over into the birth pool. The birth pool was like nice and warm and toasty. Again, I was on my knees. I was actually surprised at how deep the water was. Like it was pretty deep. So so by this point I was like, okay, like we're doing this basically. And I don't even know how long we're gonna be in here. I don't know what's gonna happen, but like, you know what I mean? Like we're just in the thick of it. So as I'm in the birth pool, it was so funny. I remember smelling like my doula had essential oils going. So when I was like laboring out of the birth pool, it was lavender. And then when I got into the birth pool, she switched it to clary sage. And if you haven't heard, clary sage actually helps to strengthen contractions. So I remember thinking, I couldn't articulate it, but I just remember thinking, oh my god, I think that's sage, and my contractions were so intense, and I'm like, I bet you it's the sage. It's like making the contractions like work harder, because it was just like by this point, and then I'm in the pool. It's just like one after the other. My husband was like feeding me water. Like the way that he described it was as if I was in a boxing ring and he's in my corner, and in between, like um in between the the action kind of thing, I'm like going over and getting water, and he's like patting my head with like a towel, and then I just go back into it. And I am so loud and vocal by this point. I am like doing anything that I can just to get through these contractions. um I'm I'm starting with like, and I'm making sure that I'm keeping my voice low, right? Because and keeping my jaw loose and relaxed, just because I know if I tense and I get into that high pitched kind of range, then it's not going to help with the progression. But I think by this point I was like so far along, like we were having this baby at some point. And I was saying things like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't think I can do this. I can't do this. And I wasn't sure if I was going through transition, just because like my contractions went from feeling pretty much the same for so long, and then after my water broke again, just going up a notch in like intensity. But it really wasn't until they were like one on top of the other that it was like, holy crap, like I don't know if I can do this anymore. And like I had no concept of like the time. I had no idea. I was like, it's probably Tuesday now, but I don't even know what time it is. For all I know, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning or something. So, um, again, like by the time I was actually getting into the pool, I was starting to feel like this urge to push. Like my body just naturally wanted me to like bear down. And then by the time again, like I was in the water, like it was starting to slowly come. And then at some point, it was to the point that like I was really like bearing down and pushing. Like I would go in almost like when you're pushing out a really, really big poop. That's probably kind of painful. Like that's how it felt. Like I was literally like, you know. And then when the contraction would end, I would stop. And that's when my midwife got up and she was like, she turned the lights on in the pool, and she basically signaled. Apparently, she signaled to the doula and was like, "Oh, like this baby's coming like now," and which was really cool because she was just kind of like doing her own thing. But it's like as soon as like the noises that I was making changed, she immediately stood up and was like, we're about to have this baby. Um, so she just kind of said to me, like, I remember thinking, or I remember feeling, like my whole lower area where my butt was. I was like, I feel like I have a big poop just like stuck there. And they're like, yeah, no, that's totally normal. It's just like your anus and your rectum kind of gets, getting itself set up to have the baby, right? Um, so they're like, that's totally normal. But my midwife was just like, if you feel like a burning sensation, let me know. So again, like I'm going through these contractions are like one on top of the other. Um, I'm like bearing down and I'm pushing. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, yeah, the burning is starting to happen. So, with each push, my midwife is basically putting a cloth like right in between my perineum and like the opening of the vaginal canal. And she was like, okay, like just push with each contraction and stop immediately once it's over. So that's what I was doing. And then at some point, um, I was like, don't move your hand. Like I could feel the baby's head coming through. And she's like, no, 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 don't worry, don't worry. I'm not moving my hand anymore. I can feel the baby's head as well. Um, and it was funny because like right before this too, I remember feeling inside or trying to feel for the baby's head, and I couldn't feel it. I was like, I don't know if the baby's near, and like I don't feel anything. And they're like, don't, it's okay. Like, don't worry about that. It's not, that's not an indicator that like it's going to take long or short or whatever. So then anyways, we get to this point where now I'm pushing and the ring of fire is like starting to happen. And then it just at some point, like baby's head is right there. And then with I think two contractions, I push the head out. And within that same contraction that I pushed the head out finally, her body just like slid right out. and it was over. And I was like, oh my God. I just did that. I just birthed this baby. It was so, so cool. Like, I remember just like having this moment of like, I did it. I did it. And it makes me teary because it's like, it's just so, so cool. And then you have this like little baby with you. Um, but anyways, so she was born. We stayed in the water for a little while. Um, Actually, a long while. My husband and I were just like looking at her, like just so amazed. Um, and it was so funny. Her cord was actually like really short, so we actually had to empty water out of the birth pool so that we could hold the baby properly. So the doula was like taking water out of the pool so that it wasn't as deep. And then eventually, it was so funny. Um, I still was having contractions after she was born, and they were still in my back. And I was like, how am I still having back labor contractions? And my midwife was like, it's just how it is. She's like, and it was funny because through my labor, um, when I kept saying like it hurts, and they're like, where does it hurt? And I kept saying my back. My midwife was just like, hey, I'm sorry to tell you, but like this is just how it's going to be until it's over. So here we are. I thought it was over, but literally until it was like over and we had birthed the placenta, that's when it all stopped. But anyways, um, yeah, so in the pool, I couldn't birth the placenta. My midwife was trying to like tug, and I was just like, no, 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 like I can't. It's not ready. Because I had stopped pulsing and everything. It stopped pulsing and everything. And then apparently we were in the pool for like 45 minutes, and she's like, hey, it's getting to the 45-minute hour mark. Um, like I really need we need to get you out of the pool and get this placenta out. So we got out of the pool. I felt totally fine. Um, we got onto the bed. I'm holding the baby, and as like I lay on the bed side, like on my side or whatever. The baby, it's so cute. Hazel just wanted to nurse right away. She wanted to suckle, so we had her on my breast, and she was just like suckling. And then eventually, I ended up pushing the placenta out on like while I was lying down, essentially, and it just kind of like slid right out. Yeah, it was it. I don't know, like how to describe it other than it felt like a really big clot that I was passing, but abnormally large. Like very dangerous if that was any other time. um, so yeah, so we birthed the placenta. Um, we kept the baby attached. She was attached to the placenta. Um, and then yeah, then we just basically like checked her vitals after we had cut the placenta or cut the cord. Um, she was pretty much attached that whole time, so for over an hour, I want to say, because we got a cute picture of her with it still attached to her. Um, yeah, we did check her vitals. She was super healthy. Um, she weighed 7 pounds 2 ounces. Um, she was 19 and a half or 3/4 inch, or sorry, 19 and a half, 3/4 inches long. And yeah, so we had our little Hazel Olivia born on August 8th at 2:55 a.m. And um, yeah, it was like an incredible experience. I just remember being so in shock at myself that I just did that. Like, I just birthed the baby, and it was the most intense. And I'm not gonna lie, it was the most excruciating pain, especially like right near the end. But clearly, I am way more capable than I thought I ever was. Like something that I could have never experienced otherwise. And I knew that my body was made to do this, and I just trusted that. that like these contractions weren't stronger than me. They were me actually, and it was just my body doing whatever it needed to do to get this baby out. So, and everything, like other than that, everything went really smoothly. I can really say. And would I do this again? 100%. I do feel like because I had a natural labor, like the after was like felt amazing in the sense of I didn't feel like I was recovering from other things like, losing this from drugs or having been or not being able to walk because I have an epidural. Like these are all things that you have to like I feel like you have to consider if you're gonna do all those interventions, right? Like I was able to walk. Mind you, it felt like everything was beat up down there, but I was able to walk. I was able to take a shower after with obviously some help just in case for whatever reason I would pass out, but everything was fine. Um, my midwife and doula did everything in terms of like cleaning up, did some laundry, helped us get into bed, all of us together. Hazel was just like laying on me. They got us some food. I literally just wanted some fruit, and they just brought us a huge bowl of fruit, and I was just eating that. And we were all set and done with everything by like 6 a.m. Oh, did I tear? I did. I had a first degree, very minor tear. I honestly can't even tell you where it was, but I think it was in my like lower part of my vaginal like hole area. My midwife had said that it was like a bit of a jagged tear, so it wasn't like a clean cut or anything. So it was. I did need a few stitches. I think I had like 4 or 5 stitches just to kind of get it back together. That was definitely probably the most uncomfortable. Like totally different sensation. I've never had stitches before, and like it was just a totally different sensation and feeling compared to the actual labor itself. And I didn't like it at all, but we had to do it just to make sure that everything healed, at least relatively back to normal. So yeah, so that was basically the labor. I made sure that I took, the next week and a week or two to just like rest and let everything and recover down there. I had to keep my legs kind of closed together to kind of make sure that that tear would just kind of come back together nicely since it was jagged. Yeah, otherwise it just was like some lacerations, some bruising, but nothing out of the ordinary. What else? Yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I wanted to share. If anybody has any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I definitely want to share a little bit maybe how I prepared, since we did have a home birth. But basically, I watched any positive home birth experience that I could find on YouTube. I watched lots of those. I watched a lot of Bridget Taylor's YouTube channel. She has fantastic videos. She's a birth doula and educator, and just has fantastic videos on just everything, pregnancy, birth, labor, in general. And I really, really liked her videos and how she explained a lot of the stuff. So that was really helpful. I watched some other videos just on like what to expect with like cervical dilation, all that kind of stuff, or like how to know when the labor starts, like just things like that. And then I also had a lot of Instagram, or a couple Instagram channels. One of them was Mama Stay Fit. That was one, and then another one was it's a doula. I can't remember, Serenity Doula or something like that. But I really liked her videos as well. The Mama Stay Fit and the Serenity Doula. They're both really, really good in terms of just like exercises to help engage baby in the pelvis. And exercises just throughout your pregnancy, like just tons of stuff to just make sure to get your body ready for like labor, which was really, really helpful. Yeah, and just I read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. I read What to Expect When You're Expecting. I read the Bradley Method, which was actually really, really, really informative. it was a little bit different than the Ina May book because this one was like very much like more of a science um, description of scientific description of labor and the progression of labor. So it was very cool to like I have a very science logical way of thinking about things, just because I studied that like through university and I was a holistic nutritionist back in the day. So I really like the description of like knowing exactly what my body was going through. So that was super helpful in just preparing for like a natural labor. The Ina May book was great because I had tons of stories that you could read about like natural, like basically home births, what they did on the farm. Don't mind Hazel. Um, but yes, I believe that was pretty much it. But just kind of getting educated. So anything that I was afraid of, I have some tools that I use, techno-tutor and self-forgiveness. So any fears that I had throughout pregnancy, whether it was about the pregnancy, miscarrying, fetal distress later on in the pregnancy or during labor, all that stuff I was able to process with the tools that I have, which were super, super helpful. Knowing why I wanted to have a natural home birth, like having a clear why, like that was super supportive as well. But really just like tackling all the fears that I had and not being afraid if they just kept coming back up, because then I would just go back and be like, okay, like, is there something that I'm uneducated on about this thing? Right. All right. I think we're done. She's waking up. But yeah, that was my birth story. And like I said, if anyone has any questions, then leave them in the comments. All right. Bye.
Keep going. A little push, little push, little push. Head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. And keep going. Keep going.
Good job.
Good. I'm gonna make sure she's not tangled. She's got a little bit of a short cord. Keep her down a little bit because her cord is a little bit short. Okay, okay. Yep. You can sit on that seat right there. A little bit more? Yeah. Her cord is pretty short. Okay. Oh, it did it.
You did it.
Hi, baby. Hi, Hazel. She looks fantastic. I'm just keeping an eye on this cord because it's going cool. Yeah. Oh. Oh. Hey, baby. Here,